Hello, this is Helena, and let's talk about WordPress hooks, one of the most powerful tools and a thing that actually makes WordPress this flexible and extendable. WordPress doesn't execute like a static top to bottom script. It runs in stages, triggering different events along the way. And many of those events are controlled by hooks. If you understand hooks, you understand how WordPress actually works. Before that, let's take a look at the WordPress runtime. When you click the website link, the first thing that happens is the request. At this point, the core WordPress files load, such as index.php, WP settings.php, and so on. They in turn load the rest of the required files. And this is when the hooks become available. Here are some global hooks that every WordPress site has. For example, the plugins loaded. As the name suggests, at this point the plugins are loaded and the plugin logic is bootstrapped. Then we have the after setup theme to register all the theme features after it's loaded. The init hook fires after WordPress is fully loaded, and at this point all the post types and taxonomies are registered. Then there is a filter hook for the content, to modify the content, inject dynamic blocks, and so on. There are hundreds and thousands of hooks in WordPress, and every plugin and theme can register its own. During runtime, WordPress reaches specific points and fires those hooks in sequence. Where can those hooks be found? They are not located in a single file. WordPress core contains hooks across many files, mostly inside the WP includes directory. Many of the hooks I just mentioned are fired from WP settings.php. Here we can see them. And of course, plugins and themes also register their own hooks in their code. But why do we actually need them? Hooks are the interface that lets you tap into core, themes, and plugins without editing them directly. Let's imagine WordPress didn't have hooks. If I wanted to change something, add functionality, inject a feature, I would have to open core files and edit them directly. I would literally have to rewrite parts of WordPress to customize it. Now imagine doing that every time WordPress updates. Every update would overwrite my changes and every plugin would fight over the same files. That would be chaos. Hooks solve that problem, and instead of modifying WordPress itself, we attach our code to specific moments in its execution. And that's exactly why they are called hooks, because we can literally hook our custom code to a specific moment of the WordPress runtime, to a specific hook. That's why WordPress.org has hook reference, where you can find all the core hooks explained. You can find such hook references for major plugins as well. For example, Crocoblock plugins also have such a directory on the GitHub. Do we have to use hooks to build websites, particularly with Crocoblock? No, we don't have to, because Crocoblock offers no-code solutions even for the most complex things. But if we want to extend the functionality of WordPress or a certain plugin to create something custom, then yes. But coding skills are obviously required in this case. Let's talk about hook types. Because there are two different types of hooks. Actions, they run something at a specific moment. And filters, they modify something before it's displayed on the front end or saved. Do action registers action hooks. Apply filters registers filter hooks. Let's get back to the root folder and open the WP login PHP file that is responsible for user login and find some actions and filters. For example, do action login enqueue scripts, and you can even see the comment there which explains what this hook is firing. Enqueue scripts and styles for the login page. Then we have the do action login head, also with an explanation and so on and so forth. What about filters? Here we can see a lot of them as well. Here you might have noticed that do action hooks look simple, while filters sometimes come with longer comments and parameters. Because actions just give short, clear instructions. For example, show the login form on the login page, and that's it, clear and simple. While filters are different, they pass data through something, literally through a filter. Look at this. Message, apply filters. Here login message is the hook name. Message is the value being passed through a filter. WordPress is basically saying, here's the current login message. If anyone wants to modify it, do it now, but return it back. Any function attached to this filter must return a value, even if it doesn't change anything. After that, WordPress checks if the message is empty, echo, which means display, basically an empty line. So if no one has modified it and it's empty, nothing is shown. But for WordPress, it's not nothing, it's an empty line. But if a plugin or theme hooks into login message and returns something like access denied, that message will be displayed thanks to this hook. And then we have all kinds of instructions for such messages. A very efficient way to see all the hooks presented on your website is by using a plugin. There are many of such plugins. I use Hook Finder. Here you can click Show Actions or Show Filters, and we'll see all of them in sequence and the callbacks attached to them. Then such hooks will be highlighted. This approach is very handy for debugging, even if the page looks quite overwhelming with this theme on. We've already looked at hooks and their structure, but how to actually use them? We need callbacks. A callback is the PHP function you give to another function so it can run it later. That's why it has this name. You pass a function as an argument so it can be called back at the right moment. Let's look at the callback structure and start with an action callback. Here we use addAction to register the callback function. Then we specify the hook name, WP footer in this case, which is the hook that triggers the callback. Next comes the callback function name, say hello in my example, and finally the priority. If multiple callbacks are attached to the same hook, the priority determines the order in which they run, and lower number runs first. By default, the priority is 10. Then we define the function itself and the code that should execute. In this case, it simply outputs hello. Now let's look at the filter callback structure. It's very similar, but you register it with add filter. Here we have the hook name, the callback function name, the priority, and the number of accepted arguments. You can see them inside the parentheses. By default, the number of accepted arguments is 1, which is why I didn't specify it in the previous example. In this case, I set it to 2 because the hook passes 2 values. Inside the function, it checks whether it's a single post template, and if so, it adds a star before the title. A filter must always return a value even if nothing is changed. Here I have a fresh WordPress installation with some demo posts. Let's add the callback. I will use my simple function that outputs hello in the footer. Open the child themes functions PHP file and paste the callback there. As you can see, it's attached to the WP footer hook, so it runs when the footer is rendered. Okay, here it is. Let's add some HTML here to make it bigger, put it inside the quote marks. Here it is. And if I switch on the Hook Finder plugin, click Show Actions, I can see the WP footer hook. And this is my Say Hello function. As you can see, there are a lot of hooks here, and I have the Astra theme activated, which adds a lot of its own hooks. Let's link my callback to one of them. For example, the Astra N3B4. Now I can find my Say Hello function here. The same with the filter. I insert this code here. I will add a star before the single page title, save the file, and let's check. No stars here because it's not a single page template and my callback checks the single page template specifically, and this is an archive. But if I open the single page, here it is. In the hook finder, I can switch on show filters, and this is my title hook and the callback called add prefix to title. This is how it works. And here comes a very logical question. Can you register your own hooks? The answer is yes, but you should understand what you are doing and why exactly you need it, as there are plenty of existing hooks for you. What is important is not to mix up hooks and callback functions. Do action and apply filters are for creating and firing hooks. Add action and add filter are for attaching callbacks. Let me briefly demonstrate the full process. Now I will add a hook, the action hook, and insert it somewhere before the content in the theme's single PHP template, the default template used for posts. Then I switch to the functions PHP and write a callback. It will display a very simple banner. I use echo with all the styling here just for demonstration because if you, for example, want to apply a filter later, you should display it a bit differently. Anyway, we have a result and this is the banner before the content. And finally, there is a function to remove an action. Of course, we can just delete the code, but what if I don't want to show this banner only on the particular post? For example, on the post with ID 242. We check the ID and remove action. Okay, this is my post with ID 242 and the banner has disappeared while it's still there on the rest of the posts. Finally, if you just write this, remove action, it will fully remove the banner. Keep in mind that the remove action priority must match the priority used in the corresponding add action callback. The default priority is 10, so if I don't write it, it means it's 10. The remove action is often used for changing the order of, for example, WooCommerce blocks that heavily rely on hooks. So you first remove the action and then add it again with another priority so you can move blocks inside the layout. If you're a web developer, you already know what hooks are and how to deal with them. But why should website developers and designers have at least a basic understanding of them? So understanding hooks will be very helpful in many cases, including those top 3. Modifying and extending theme and plugin functionality without editing them directly. Control execution order by changing priority when 2 or more plugins try to connect to the same hook. Add, remove, or change functionality based on context, specific page, user role, and so on, without editing templates. Crocoblock plugins use hooks a lot under the hood, and if you work with Jet Engine, you saw a little example of how filter callbacks can be used in the dynamic field widget, and see how many options and flexibility they offer and how useful they are. You can transform the way the data is displayed quite dramatically. And if you feel confident, you can add some custom callbacks using the hook reference by Crocoblock. I will leave a link in the description to the article about WordPress hooks. There you will find useful links and references if you'd like to explore a topic further. Thank you for watching, subscribe to this channel, and please hit the like button. Join us in the next video.